A big thank you to the EU LIFE programme who funded this work.
Thank you, Mark. Sorry, some of you won't actually be able to see me over this podium, but I'm going to be talking about the education and engagement activity that took place for ReMEDIES. So the broad aims for this programme were to connect people with the... Maybe. Is this better? Yeah, great. To connect people to the ocean, teach people about seabed habitats, as well as promoting responsible recreation. There was a particular focus on capturing communities, recreational users, and any visitor to the 5 project sites, as well as influencing parents through their children's learning and educating the next generation through the schools programme. In 2018, a partnership workshop highlighted that there was a lack of awareness on how important these seabed habitats were, which was one of the key factors to their decline through physical disturbance, as well as wider ocean literacy issues as well. So the ReMEDIES programme found that they could raise awareness of this and fill in those gaps through a public engagement programme and a schools programme. So the target for the public engagement was to deliver 6 roadshows. This was going to boating communities, sailing clubs, activity centres and all sorts, as well as delivering large-scale public events. And this was to target the public and the boaters. And then the schools programme had a target to deliver to 900 children through in-school activities, as well as... Sorry, I just... thought we were on the wrong side there, to deliver 900 children through in-school activities as well as digital lessons. The educational materials designed for this were to be widely applicable to various stakeholders, different projects, as well as the public as well, and OCT took the lead on the education side of this. So quickly before I talk about the schools programme, which is what I'm going to focus on, here's some nice pictures of some of the public events that Esther and the team got up to, from boat shows to community talks and large-scale seed bagging events as well. So the schools programme. In total, engaged 4,881 students. So these were school pupils as well as home-educated students. And this was done via a series of workshops. These were split into 5 different subjects, and they had links to the national curriculum as well. These could be delivered either one-off or as sustained engagement over a period of time. And they were also designed for a variety of ages, so Key Stage 1 all the way to Key Stage 5. That is demonstrated quite nicely in this matrix. So we can see the subjects range from science, technology, engineering and maths, to science, art and literacy, humanities, and then the online and outdoor workshops as well. All of these resources can be found on the Save Our Seabed website. I will be giving you a few examples, but there's lots more, so please feel free to have a look. Each workshop aimed to cover these 3 key concepts. So seagrass being a marine flowering plant, supporting biodiversity, as well as its importance to us humans and the planet. First up, for example, is the STEM workshop. This one focused on anchoring and mooring damage to the seabed, particularly at low tide, and highlighted how STEM solutions are often used for the protection of these habitats. The children were asked to design their own solution to anchor damage by using various materials they found in their classroom or recycled materials, and they even got to make origami boats as well. We then had the Seagrass to Seeds workshop. So this one focused on the importance of the plant to humans and the planet, using artifacts to really connect the students to the diversity of marine life. So you've got this starfish here, so using things like skeletons, shells, corals, to highlight how wonderful the marine realm is, as well as connect them to species that they'd find in seagrass meadows. This workshop also highlighted the plant itself, the importance of the root structure, as well as introducing concepts of carbon capture, which linked really nicely to the large-scale seed packing and seed bombing events. And then the humanities workshop was mapping the seabed. So the students got to wear VR headsets here and go on an immersive dive through the ocean, through lots of different habitats, including seagrass. They take the knowledge they learnt from this, combined with learning about mapping and compass, using a compass, to then create and annotate their own scientific map. Now, the base of this workshop could be delivered around Plymouth Marine Park or the Isles of Scilly Special Area of Conservation, and the schools, depending on their geographical location, it just be a bit more geographically relevant to them. The outdoor workshops were to facilitate ocean connection through experience. These were primarily delivered as part of the Seagrass Superheroes Home Educators Pack, as well as to those schools which were in close proximity to the coast. Got to do loads of fun things, from snorkeling, rock pooling to boat trips. So yeah, it sounds great, to be honest. Numbers. As I previously mentioned, 4,881 students were engaged through the programme, which absolutely smashes out the 900 target, which is great. OCT's schools programme engaged 1,662 of those, with 380 being through sustained interactions. It is worth mentioning that COVID put a bit of a spanner in the works, and the project delivery, or the programme's delivery, didn't start till September 2021. All of these workshops went through evaluation. There was two types. So for sustained engagement, students did a pre and post evaluation form, and then for a one-off workshop, they just did this one here, so post evaluation. They both had the same questions, and this allowed the team to evaluate it against generic learning outcomes. For a more in-depth information about the evaluation that was done, there is a full education report which can be found online, and we will be hearing a little bit more about behaviour change a bit later on as well. But I'm going to run through some of the GLOs, or generic learning outcomes. So there was 980 of these which could be compared, or responses that could be compared with these. These 5 here were all split into sub-outcomes. And I'm just going to talk through them. So first up, we have knowledge and understanding. So the team's aim here was really to broaden knowledge of seabed habitats, the relationship between individuals and the sea, as well as understanding how science is important in understanding our seabed, with 77% of students really agreeing that they learnt new things during the workshop. Next up, we have the skills. So the outcome here was for students to develop both observational and communication skills, as well as investigate plant growth and engineering through experimentation. Another great result, with 70% really agreeing that they were able to tell someone what they did in their workshop. For attitudes and values, the team wanted to increase appreciation of the seabed and make the students feel positive about science and learning, which again was really great. 72% saying they really agreed that they understood how important the habitats were for themselves and the rest of the ocean. For enjoyment, inspiration and creativity, of course, it was important that the ReMEDIES programme delivered this in a fun and engaging way, and surprised those with the new things that they learned, and ensured that they were feeling inspired by the project itself. So 55% really agreed that they have a good time learning, and then that's another really great chunk, about 25% also agreeing. And then finally, we have activity, behaviour and progression. So this was focusing on motivating deeper understanding of the ocean and exploring those habitats, as well as encouragement of pro-ocean behaviours. Another great result, so 50% really wanted to go and explore a seabed habitat after having a workshop. So when we pop all of these together, we find that the ReMEDIES engagement programme was really fun and it was knowledgeable. So the students were learning key concepts in a fun and enjoyable way. So the key findings throughout the whole of the engagement and education programme were that the workshops increased participants' knowledge and skills of the key concepts, that sustained engagement increases the impact the GLOs have, with clear difference for building those important connections to the sea or the ocean, and then by embedding skills and changing ocean values in participants was more effective with sustained engagement. And that's me done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eden. And as Mark said, if you have any questions, Eden, thank you so much for representing our education staff that were involved in the project. And a big thank you to Esther and Loveday, who obviously aren't here, but were key members of our project that delivered all the education work as part of ReMEDIES. So yeah, the next slot on the agenda is me talking about our advanced mooring systems and voluntary no-anchor zones and the installations and our experiences during the project. So I work in one of the national teams in Natural England, so I've been involved in the project really supporting our Natural England site leads on delivering this aspect of work. So just as a bit of background, advanced mooring systems or eco-moorings are increasingly used as a management tool around the world. But in the UK, there's been historically limited uptake, and ReMEDIES was really an opportunity to trial and demonstrate the performance of these systems on a larger scale. So as well as installing advanced mooring systems as boat moorings, we've used the opportunity to demonstrate their use as markers as well. So I've already touched a lot on the kind of engagement and outreach we've been doing, but informing people about advanced mooring systems was a key part of that. And we have our tabletop engagement tool out in the refreshments area if you want to take a look at that later. We also had 2 very successful advanced mooring system workshops as part of the project, one here at the aquarium, actually right at the beginning of the project in 2020. So to support kind of our initial discussions on what we wanted to install, we focused really on 3 different types of moorings as part of this project. So Hazlet, Seaflex and Sterling. And ideally on helical screw anchors because that minimises the footprint as much as possible. So we chose to kind of focus on those designs mainly because we had already good working relationships with those manufacturers. And there are examples already in the UK to build on, but there are obviously other designs and manufacturers out there. So I'm not sure if you can see this slide very well, sorry about that, but it's just a summary of what we have installed. So in the total at the end of the project, hopefully there's one more to go in, 17 advanced mooring systems as boat moorings and 24 as markers in some form, so a total of 41. That is less than our original target. We had an original target of 76 advanced mooring systems to install, but I'll go on to kind of the challenges and discuss why that is lower a bit later on. So I just wanted to go through a couple of kind of case studies of examples of the installations that we have put in place. So very near to here we have Corsan Bay, where we currently have 3 Seaflex moorings and to be 10 Sterling moorings as advanced mooring systems used by individual boat owners. We were very lucky in this site because, as Jean-Luc Salant mentioned earlier, there was a previous project here installing advanced mooring systems in Corsan. So we had a really good foundation to build upon to get more volunteers as part of the ReMEDIES project. So there were a couple of kind of modifications, technical issues along the way. We had some issues with mooring users experiencing entanglement or snagging with the rope attached from their bow to the mooring, their bow, sorry, to the mooring, and the mid-water floats on the mooring, which was resolved mainly by people just using shorter lines. We also had some potential issues of people adding additional lines to the top buoys, which impacted the performance of the mooring potentially. And this has been resolved by all the moorings having their top buoys replaced to make them a lot more easier to pick up. And also with the Seaflex mooring, during a Natural England dive survey in 2022, it was noted that the top buoy on one of the Seaflex moorings was submerged due to entanglement at the bottom. So we worked with Seaflex and the mooring contractor, George, who I think might be here in the audience, there he is, to come up with a resolution to that, and the recommendation was to add on additional floats. So it's just kind of some examples of kind of the modifications and kind of learning that we went through as part of the project. Another example is we've been working in the Isle of Wight, and in Yarmouth Harbour we installed a Seaflex mooring in 2020. However, it was removed by the Harbour Authority because they had less confidence in it compared to a kind of traditional mooring, mainly through kind of just familiarity with the system and ongoing maintenance. but they have now got 4 Sterling advanced mooring systems in place, which they've had very few issues with, other than some issues with the shackles deteriorating, which required replacement. I just also wanted to give an example of some of the innovation that we've been involved with as part of the project. So in Osborne Bay earlier this year, following kind of recreational boating surveys, which highlighted requirement for a management option in Osborne Bay, and in consultation with the local community, we put in a voluntary no anchor zone. This comprised of 8 markers, which were on helical screws with floats to achieve kind of neutral buoyancy. And the contractor developed a mooring installation tool, which you can see in this picture, which negated the requirement for divers, because in these conditions, using divers to install those helical screws would have been pretty tricky. And it also made it a safer and more efficient operation. And then finally, the Fallon-Helford SAC, we worked with the Helford Marine Conservation Group to put in a couple of extra advanced mooring system markers designed by a local mooring services to improve the visibility of the voluntary no anchor zone in the Fallon-Helford. So kind of just some highlights personally for me as being part of this project and working on advanced mooring systems. That one of the main ones is feedback from the owners. It was a huge relief to me that everybody actually wants to keep their moorings at the end of the project. So that was great, and they're happy with their performance. Working with manufacturers and contractors. I have no technical knowledge of moorings at all at the start of the project, and I probably don't really now either. But kind of working with the people who do and coming up with kind of solutions and the technical issues was interesting, completely different to the day job. And then one of the things I've most enjoyed is developing our advanced mooring system network, which now meets every 6 weeks. And we have over 40 members of this network with really interesting kind of guest speakers and guest talks. And it's really helped to kind of learn lessons between different projects going around the UK. So we've got members from Northern Ireland to the Channel Islands. If you'd like to join, please get in touch. And then in terms of challenges and lessons learned, there's quite a lot. I won't go into them in too much detail, but I think a top tip is really early engagement with the manufacturer and mooring contractor right at the start to resolve any early issues. There's continued uncertainty around effectiveness of advanced mooring systems still in this country, so there were more limited opportunities for trials than we had expected originally, so that was probably one of the reasons it was difficult to reach our target. Insurance is often cited as an issue, costs were higher than budgeted, biofiling was highlighted, navigational hazards, which I've mentioned earlier, seabed suitability for helical screws, we've often used blocks instead. And a key one for Natural England was complexity. We're really not set up as an organisation to do new things like buying and installing moorings. Ended up, I think I wrote a 22-page internal guidance document just on how to buy and put a mooring in. There's so much to think about and took a lot of more time than we'd expected. And seagrass recovery takes time. Work previously that Jean-Luc spoke about in core sand, it takes time to demonstrate the effectiveness of these systems. So managing expectations, I think, is a big one. Ultimately, just sharing experience and learning from a wide range of different organisations, other trials and experts has really been invaluable along the way. So general recommendations are we should be prioritising installation of these systems in the future on sensitive seabed habitats. We should continue monitoring their performance, maintenance and effectiveness so we can really build that evidence base to help future mooring owners and managers make decisions. Develop future technical guidance on different systems and ensure in-water monitoring adjustments and knowledge of installers accounts for site-specific environmental conditions right at the start. So we've got quite a few useful reports and further information on our website. Just want to give a plug to an advanced mooring system guide that we've just created. So thank you everyone who has inputted to that from the Advanced Mooring System Network. It goes through everything from maintenance, insurance, how to choose different types of moorings, mainly just the lessons we've learned as part of the project. And then in terms of future work, all the installations that we've got in at the moment have been transferred to the individuals and organisations involved in those trials. So a huge thank you to them for being involved and also then taking them on. We will continue to chair and support lessons learned through the Advanced Mooring System Network, so that will continue. And we'd like to continue our ongoing monitoring of recovery around our installations as well. So thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Jan. I think you're playing down your knowledge there. I think you have become a bit of an expert on AMS over the past sort of 4 years of delivery. But is it correct to say that you've still never seen one in the water?
I have still never seen one in person. I don't get out much.
Now, I know there are a couple of harbour authorities here that do have these within their jurisdictions. So if anybody feels like volunteering the resources to take Jan out to see one of these, then please go and please offer. So we do have some times for questions, and I realise that there's many of you that have been involved in these trials at some point over the past 4 years. So do we have any questions from our audience, please?
Remember, I'm not an engineer, so nothing technical. I'll pass that on to people with much more experience than me.
There's a lady at the back there.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Meg Roberts. I'm from Langston Harbour. I just wondered, most of the AMS that you've installed have been in deep water. How transferable are they to a sort of tidal site, like an intertidal? Because obviously some of it, I don't know what you call the one with the multiple floats on it, but it's still a chain system, it's still going to have some sort of wear on the seabed.
Yeah, we've been having a lot of discussions about that on our Advanced Mooring System Network, and one of the sections in the guide that we've written has kind of intertidal drying out options, but I think that's definitely something that we still need to explore. One of the options that they've used in North Wales a lot is just converting their moorings into rope moorings for small boats that are taken out during the winter, because it has far less impact when it's lying on the seagrass. But yeah, if anybody wants to take that work further, then that would be great.
Okay, do we have any other questions? A lady here.
Hello, I'm Emily. I'm from the Marine Conservation Society. I don't know if you have an answer to this, but some of the workshops that I've been involved with where we've talked about helical screws versus blocks, one of the big things that people have pointed out is the carbon emissions that come from the large blocks that are used. Is there a solution to that, or anything?
Is that in terms of concrete blocks?
Yeah, so it was the discussion around the amount of CO2 kind of saved by the seagrass versus what is cost by the concrete blocks.
Yeah, we have had discussions about that, not just in relation to the blocks, but also kind of the plastic components and all that kind of thing as well. But I think you can use different types of blocks, don't have to be concrete, so you could use locally mined kind of, I think granite's been used quite a lot in some of our locations, so there are different options. But yeah, it's definitely something that people have kind of flagged up, but something to think about.
I think James wanted to respond to the carbon question from...
Yeah. Hi, so we've been doing some work in this, and basically we have got blocks that are carbon neutral, and that's not just a wild claim. It's like it's certifiable, and also there are types of concrete which reduce the volume of the blocks and reducing its impact. And 3 of the people we've been working with on recent projects have a complete recycle program for the blocks when they come to the end of life, even after about 50 years. So if you want to catch up with me for more details, I'll be happy to have a further chat. Oh, sorry, waving at the wrong person. But, yeah.
Thanks, James. Sorry, I've forgotten the lady in the front here. Yes. Leah. Lauren. Leah.
Forgotten my name already, Mark. Long day. And linked to that, I spoke to someone the other day actually. They're using recycled old concrete from construction as blocks, so not creating them from new. Possibly, yeah. I forgot about you, Mark.
Yes. Well, we were recently donated some waste concrete from Hinkley Point C. So working with Kia, Natural Resources, and Nuclear, and I forget what the other R is. But yes, they've from their construction process, they've volunteered or donated blocks to us. So yeah, that was me. So.
Yeah. See, I got big job then. My original question was, where do you see funding for these advanced mooring systems? Because just conversations I've been having, throughout is these are great solutions, but how are we going to fund these going forwards? There have been examples where the Crown Estate have put funding in, or National Trust, whoever owns the seabed. But what were your thoughts?
I don't know, Kate. That's a really difficult question. Another ReMEDIES project? I don't know. I think, no, it's a really good question. I think the Studland example, which is in the guide, has been amazing, that they've developed that and will have a model in which at some point the National Trust can hand over, and there'll be enough money generated by the visitor moorings through people paying for them that will maintain them going forward. But yeah, a lot to think about.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? There's a couple. There's a gent over there, and then Hazel will come to you. Oh, is it in response to that? Oh, okay. Leah, could you deliver give Hazel the microphone, please, because she's going to respond to the payment question.
Sorry, yeah, in answer to Kate's question, I mean, I don't definitively know the answer, but there is a huge amount of interest in organisations and banks wanting to fund seagrass restoration. And actually, if we have the evidence, which we do have now from ReMEDIES, that actually these mooring systems actually can restore seagrass, that, in a pretty guaranteed way, then that could possibly be used to then tap into that kind of funding. So yeah, there's a lot of interest in funding restoration, and it's about joining the dots and kind of, emphasising that moorings can do it.
Thanks, Hazel. I think there was a gent over here with his hand up. Oh, he's already got a mic.
Hi, Eric, Marine Conservation Society. Just wondering, you mentioned the concern about biofouling on the increased structures of these. Have we done any surveys in terms of the species living on and within the advanced mooring systems, and maybe we can turn the messaging into like habitat hotspots that these can create?
We haven't done any specific surveys. We've got images, and that is exactly what one of the mooring owners fed back to us. He said, I have noticed more biofouling than I had expected, but it's great. I like it because it's nice for marine life. So we didn't actually have it as a negative point of feedback. So that was really interesting. But no, we haven't done any specific surveys.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, thanks. Put your hands together for Jan then. Jan's fantastic presentation.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for this warm welcome. I'm Louise Montgomery. I'm a senior consultant with Powerlight Impact. So Powerlight Impact were commissioned in 2023 to undertake a behavioural science evaluation of the ReMEDIES project. So essentially looking at the ways in which the interventions across the 5 different areas affected behaviour change in recreational boaters and coastal users to mitigate their impact of recreational activities on the seabed. So I'm here to tell you about the findings. Oh, that was meant to go first. So just to give you a little bit of an insight into how we did this evaluation, we used what's called the COM-B model, which is a framework that says that there are certain aspects that are required in order to incentivize behavior change. So those are the COM, and the B is the behavior. So C, capability, O, opportunity, and M, motivation. You need one or all of these things in order to change behavior. So for this evaluation, we took the interventions under the ReMEDIES project and applied it to this model. So looked at the ways in which they influenced each of the different areas. So capability, are they able to do it? So that's talking about the awareness raising and the education. So in terms of the ReMEDIES activities, that's the boaters workshops, the interpretation panels, also the school workshops that we heard about earlier. And then O, opportunity. Does the environment allow them to do it? Is there something physical in the environment that allows boaters or other coastal users to be able to do something to actually protect the environment or mitigate the damage? So in terms of ReMEDIES, we're talking about the installation of the AMS and the installation of the voluntary no anchor zones. And then finally, motivation. So do they want to do it? This is a little bit more of an internal process, thinking about reflective on whether people have the intention and the belief that protecting the seabed is something worth doing, that the installation of the voluntary no anchor zones are something that will actually allow people to mitigate their damage. So again, just to give a little bit of an insight into how we undertook this evaluation. So some of the things that Powerlight did, we did a review of the existing data because we came in 2023 and the project obviously started years before that. In 2024, this year, we did a recreational boater survey with 221 respondents. And we did qualitative data, so 32 interviews with project partners, local project teams, boaters, and harbour masters across the 5 different areas of the project, just to get a bit of an understanding beyond the kind of factual number data and to get a bit of a storytelling and a colour to what went on. Also have to highlight there are limitations to this. Behaviour change in science isn't a simple process. So first of all, there is relatively limited behaviour change focused data for us to work with. And then also how much change can be attributed to remedies, obviously with climate change, environmental work, seagrass projects more generally, especially in terms of education and public awareness, how much of that raising can be contributed to remedies, because remedies is, of course, part of a bigger picture. And finally, the differences between boaters' intentions and actions. So that's kind of to highlight when you're, someone is answering a question in a survey, for example, it might be easy to say, yes, I would never do something, but the reality might not always be the case. So now you've all been waiting for the findings, now going into the findings. So on capability, are they able to do it? To do with awareness and training. Just to give a bit of an insight into what we heard from some of the interviews, the feedback on the power of national messaging was highlighted across a lot of the interviews. This is something that we heard. There's nothing better than getting into the national media. It makes everyone sit up and take notice. Otherwise, they might just think it's a handful of conservation nutters that want to save the seabed. Now, I might not use those words myself, but it just gives the idea that national messaging can reach people who might not otherwise be receptive to the information. And this is our quantitative findings. So percentage of boaters who are aware of sources to look up location of seagrass increased from 54% in 2021 to 84% in 2024. 82% of boaters who attended training report increased awareness of anchoring best practice, which I think Kate had touched on earlier. 6% of boaters in 2024 responded, it's always okay to anchor in the seagrass, which is a reduction from 20% in 2021, where respondents said, I thought it was okay to anchor in seagrass. Final one. And then 70% of boaters are aware of advanced mooring systems in 2024 compared to only 46% in 2021. So big increases and decreases there. Then an opportunity. Does the environment allow them to do it? Again, is there something physical in the environment that allows people to protect the seabed or avoid damaging it? So the installation of voluntary no anchor zones and the AMS. What was particularly powerful from a lot of the interviews that we heard was a lot of the preliminary work that was done to work with communities, not just with the harbour authorities and boaters, but also with landowners and everyone before installing the voluntary no anchor zone in order to provide an open space for discussion. And as a result, we heard this. Because of all the work that we've been doing through the Life Remedies and locally, the installation of the voluntary no anchor zone actually came as no surprise to anybody, and the yacht owners just accepted it, which is an amazing feat, because we also heard in some of the interviews that that wasn't always the case for attempts to install voluntary no anchor zones in other areas. And then what also came out of it was, so voluntary no anchor zones is one thing to install, but the other thing is whether or not they'll be respected. And what was seen was that on busy days when people were sitting around in the harbours and saw boats going into the voluntary no anchor zones, community members were going up to boats and saying, please, can you move along? Hopefully politely, but can you please get out of the voluntary no anchor zone? And then our quantitative findings. So 65% of respondents had been boating in an area with a voluntary no anchor zone in 2024, which is an increase from 38% in 2021. And 62% of boaters on the south coast of England report having AMS systems in their boating area, which is a huge increase from 0% in 2021. And finally, motivation. Do they want to do it? About the intention and the belief to actually want to protect the seabed and do these things. So 92% of boaters who attended training intend to look up the location of seagrass before anchoring. 81% of boaters who attended training intend to use an AMS if available. And then on the other side, more of a kind of education side, 87% of respondents agree, I feel a personal sense of responsibility to protect the seabed and the seagrass. So showing that respondents don't just think that it's somebody else's problem to do it and actually feel that they can do something about it, which I think is something that was very, very powerful that came from ReMEDIES in interacting with recreational activities and boaters. And then this is just to touch a little bit on the limitations relating to AMS. We did hear that earlier from Jan about some of the practical issues, but something else that came out of the interviews is a little bit to do with the mindset. So I think the public are probably more prepared to use them than the actual providers. It's changing that mindset really and how to reconfigure all your moorings in the harbour area. So just giving an idea that there is still work to be done in trying to convince people that these are they're safe, but also even though things have been done in a particular way, that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be another way of doing it and the effort to actually change that. So finally, as you'll all have been waiting for, what did we find? What did this all lead to in terms of behaviour change? So boaters reporting they never anchored in seagrass increased to 41% in 2024, which is an increase from 17% in 2021. Boaters using AMS increased to 22% in 2024, which is a huge increase from 5%. And then finally, preliminary data from observational studies suggests the percentage of boats anchoring in seagrass at Osborne Bay was reduced after installation of the voluntary no anchor zone. So it was reduced from 21% to 43% in 2023. So that is our findings of the evaluation. And this is just a final kind of infographic that has all of the information that shows kind of the kind of stages, the capability, opportunity, and motivation, and then the kind of resulting of the behaviour change. So I think that's me. I don't know if I've gone over time, but...
Thank you very much, Louise, and thank you for travelling all the way from Edinburgh as well. We didn't mention how far you've come to be here with us, so thank you.
I had a great 9-hour train journey yesterday, but it was great.
Does anyone have any questions for Louise? Yes, Kate at the front, please.
Thank you for all the work you've done, and yeah, a really good summary, and great to see the impact in the boating community. I just wanted to, is it the under opportunity? It said 65% of respondents have been boating in an area of, does that mean within the voluntary no anchor zone, or just there's been an increase in general people boating and there happens to be a...
Yeah, more that there's just a presence of the voluntary no anchor zone, not that they've been going through them or anchoring within them.
So they're aware of it, their awareness.
Aware of them, and that they've actually been boating on the south coast of England where there's actually a voluntary no anchor zone present. So it just shows kind of the increase in the installation of these areas across that time period from 38% to then 65%.
Cool, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, the lady in the back, please.
Okay, from both sides then. Hi, Tors Froud from Plymouth Sound National Marine Park. You took baseline data from 21 and then you came in at 23 and you were doing obviously the latest mitigation survey. How many did you have for baseline data? Because it's quite a limited longitudinal evaluation on this, isn't it? And obviously by you going in and doing 221 people, there's no way, that's obviously quite, it's limited with public, with perception mapping. So what now? Where can we go? Because I'm just conscious that that's quite small compared to the fraternity of yachties.
Yeah, I mean, this is something. So we came in 2023 and did our own survey, and then there was another one by another company in 2021. And this is something that we do have kind of highlighted in the report, that it isn't necessarily representative of all voters, and that there is limitations. And this is kind of one of the kind of lessons learned that we are highlighting in our evaluation report, in terms of being able to, at the very, very beginning, have a baseline data, maybe more representative across the piece.
Thank you. Any further questions for Louise? Yes. Mel at the front, please.
Hi, thanks, Louise. Really interesting talk. I am curious whether any of your questions addressed cost implications, or whether you got any responses that addressed or implied any concerns about cost. Because that would be a kind of fairly classic thing, I would have thought, that people would be concerned.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So out of the qualitative interviews, we did ask kind of what barriers they might have thought for change in costs. Was one of the ones that came up, both in terms of AMS and the voluntary no anchor zone. And of course, that's where the ReMEDIES funding really helped to propel things, because it did add funding for, you know, the trial of the AMS, but also the installation of the buoys of the voluntary no anchor zone. So that's a very good point.
Brilliant. Thank you very much again for your time. That was great. Thank you.